She said she only wanted to help. But the next morning, she woke up inside a billionaire's mansion, and the world called her a thief. Someone filmed that night, and the internet turned kindness into a crime. The wind cut through Ravensport Avenue like 1,000 glass shards. It was the kind of night that made even the city seem tired of existing. A girl rode alone through the haze of snow and half-dead streetlights, her bicycle chain groaning under the weight of a fading hope. Amira Cole, 17, thin, quick, and tougher than she looked, hunched over the handlebars. Her delivery bag thumped against her side with every turn of the wheel. On her cracked phone screen, a message blinked. Late again, and you're done. Don't come back! She gritted her teeth and kept pedaling. One last order, one last mile, one last night in the cheap room at the harbor's edge. That was all she needed. Just one more night of survival. The streets were empty, except for one figure standing by a bus stop near the bridge. An old man, frail, lost, his scarf hanging loose, fingers clutching a wrinkled paper. He looked out at the traffic like someone expecting a miracle that never came. People passed him without a glance. A man in a fur collar turned away. A woman pretended to answer her phone. The city had learned how to look through people like him. Amira saw him too, and almost kept going. But then her mother's voice drifted through the cold. If someone's lost, baby, you stop. She squeezed the brakes. The bicycle groaned to a halt. 47 p.m. 13 minutes left before the order was marked, failed, her rent, her job. Her entire threadbare balance depended on those minutes. She whispered to herself, "Not tonight. Please, not tonight," and pushed forward again. But after 2 turns of the wheel, guilt hit like a punch to the ribs. She saw him again in her mind. Shivering, eyes glassy, forgotten, Amira cursed under her breath, spun the bike around, and coasted back toward the bus stop. "Sir?" she called, voice careful. "You okay out here?" The man blinked, startled. "Bus 23, he murmured. "To Meridian. I think I missed it." His voice cracked like thin ice. Up close, she saw the purple in his hands, the split leather shoes, the lost dignity of someone time had abandoned. "Meridian?" she echoed. "That's far." He nodded, uncertain, as if the name itself might vanish. Amira checked her phone again. 7:49. She could still make it, but then he coughed. Dry, weak, final. Something inside her broke. She pulled off her scarf and wrapped it around his neck. "Come on," she said softly. "Let's figure this out." He hesitated. "You don't have to." "Yeah," she said. "Looks like I already did." Her breath turned to steam as she lifted him onto the back rack of her bike. The frame creaked but held. "Hold on tight," she said. He smiled. Faint, unsure, but real. The tires rolled. The snow hissed. The city blurred into ghostly streaks of gray. Amira pedaled harder, her chest burning. Somewhere behind her, the old man hummed a tune with no words, a lullaby from a forgotten life. And as they disappeared down the hill, the neon of Ravensport faded behind them. The girl who had nothing was carrying a man who had lost everything. Neither knew that before the night ended. One would rediscover his name, and the other, her worth. Does kindness still matter? She wondered. In a city where mercy costs more than rent? The wind didn't answer, but something, faint and unseen, had already begun to change. The river road curved like a silver scar under the streetlights. Snow drifted sideways, thick enough to blur the world into shades of gray. Amira's breath came out in clouds. Her fingers ached around the handlebars, her thighs burning from the climb. Behind her, the old man held onto the bike's frame, quiet except for the sound of his shallow breathing. The wheels slipped on a patch of ice. She steadied herself, heart pounding. "You all right back there?" she called. He nodded slowly. "Cold night," he murmured. "Colder than I remember." "Yeah," she said between breaths. "Feels like the whole world's frozen solid." For a few moments, there was only the sound of wind. Then faintly he said, "Not the whole world." "You stopped." Amira didn't answer. Her eyes burned from the cold and from something else, the sting of being seen. Nobody ever saw her. Not really. She was the girl on the bike, the delivery kid with skin the color the city liked to forget. She turned onto the bridge. The iron rails hummed with the gusts from the river below. Far in the distance, the skyline glowed, towers of light that belonged to people who'd never have to ride through nights like this. The man's voice came again, softer now. "I used to build there." "Build what?" "Everything," he said with a faint smile. "And then I lost it." The way he said it, calm, almost detached, made her glance back. His eyes weren't blank anymore. "They were searching alive. You were an architect or something?" she asked. "Something," he said, the corner of his mouth curling. "Funny thing about money. It can build walls so high you forget what's on the other side." Amira didn't know how to reply. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than the snow. Her mind flickered to the apartment buildings she passed every night. Glass towers with heat and light, guarded lobbies and security gates. And her, one paycheck away from sleeping on the street. She swallowed hard. "Walls like that don't fall easy." "They do," he said. "When kindness climbs them first." She blinked, not sure if she'd heard right. Behind them, a car sped past, horn blaring, spraying a wave of icy slush that hit her legs. She hissed, swerving. The man steadied himself. "People are wild," she muttered. "They've always been," he said gently. "But sometimes the wild are the ones who survive." The hill grew steeper. Her legs screamed, lungs burning. She wanted to stop, but his weight pressed down like both burden and purpose. Halfway up, the wind shifted, and she caught the smell of chimney smoke. Faint warmth from some house that wasn't hers. The sight of it almost broke her resolve. Her mother's voice rose again in her head. "Don't let the cold tell you who you are." She gritted her teeth and pushed harder. "Almost there," she whispered. Behind her, the old man started humming again, and the same tune, low and haunting. It wasn't random. It had rhythm, like a song that once belonged to Joy. "What's that song?" she asked. "Something my wife used to hum," he said, when the world still made sense. They reached the top of the hill. The wind eased for a moment. Below them, faint through the fog, she could see the lights of a neighborhood half buried in snow. "Is that where you live?" she asked. He looked ahead, eyes bright. "Home," he whispered. "If it still remembers me." Amira smiled tiredly. "Then let's go remind it." As the bike rolled downhill, the cold sliced sharper, but her chest felt strangely warm. She didn't know that each turn of the wheel was carrying her closer. Not just to the man's house, but into the center of a secret that would change everything she thought she knew about him. And about the kind of world that decided who deserved to be saved. "Hey, get away from the gate!" The voice cut through the snow like a whip. Amira's bike skidded to a stop at the bottom of the hill. The tires hissed on the ice as she steadied herself. In front of her loomed a white iron gate, twice her height, its bars glittering under the amber light. Beyond it, a mansion silent and enormous wrapped in frost. A man in a wool coat stormed out from the side path. His gloved hand lifted a flashlight. The beam hit Amira's face first, then the trembling figure on the bike's rack. "What the hell do you think you're doing here?" he barked. "Deliveries go to the back entrance." I'm not delivering anything," Amira stammered, her voice hoarse. He was lost." The man's jaw tightened. "Lost?" He swung the light toward the old man. The beam caught a face that seemed suddenly familiar. The kind you'd seen in a framed portrait, not on a frozen street. "Mr. Langford?" The guard's voice faltered. "Sir?" The old man blinked, disoriented but smiling faintly. "Home," he murmured. "I told her I'd find my way back." The flashlight lowered instantly. The guard's face turned pale. "Good Lord, we've been searching all night." He reached for the gate controls. The iron doors creaked open, spilling a rectangle of golden light onto the snow. Amira followed, her bike creaking under the strain. The air changed inside the property, warmer, cleaner, heavy with the scent of cedar and wealth. She had never breathed air that quiet. They reached the steps of the mansion. Another man appeared, older, wearing a robe, disbelief etched across his features. "Mr. Langford, sir, where have you been?" "We called the police, the hospitals." He stopped when he saw Amira. His gaze dropped, flicked back up. The pause was long enough to sting. I found him by the bus stop, she explained quickly. He was freezing. The man's lips parted as if to speak, but the words tangled somewhere between gratitude and suspicion. You brought him here? On that? His eyes flicked to the battered bike. Amira straightened. It got us here. The old man chuckled softly, his voice thin but amused. Best ride I've had in years. That broke the silence. The housekeeper rushed forward to help him inside, fussing over his coat. Amira stepped back, suddenly aware of the wet tracks her boots had left on the marble floor. The contrast hit her, her dark jacket soaked and frayed, surrounded by silk curtains and polished glass. You should come in, the older man said at last, perhaps out of guilt. You look half frozen. Amira hesitated at the threshold. The heat rolling from the fireplace felt unreal. No, I should go, she murmured. I just wanted to make sure he got home. Wait, the old man said, turning toward her. Your name? Amira, she replied softly. He nodded, repeating it as if testing a memory. Amira, you have a good heart, she smiled awkwardly. Take care, sir. The butler slipped a folded bill into her gloved hand. Polite, distant, final. She didn't look at it. She just nodded and stepped back into the cold. Behind her, the gate closed with a mechanical sigh. As she walked her bike down the hill, she glanced back once. The mansion glowed faintly through the falling snow, a beacon of warmth that didn't belong to her. She tightened her scarf, still carrying the faint scent of the man's cologne, and whispered to herself. Funny how kindness feels colder when it crosses the wrong fence. She didn't know that somewhere inside, behind those glass walls, a conversation had already begun, one that would drag her name, her skin, and her worth into a world that measured compassion by pedigree. The sound of the gate locking behind her still echoed in Amira's ears when a voice called out from the doorway. Wait! She turned. The butler stood there holding out her scarf, the same one she'd wrapped around the old man's neck. It was neatly folded now, pressed clean. You left this, he said curtly. Amira reached for it. But before she could speak, another voice floated down the marble staircase. Firm, feminine and cold. Who's that? A woman appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a gray silk robe. Her hair was perfect despite the hour, her posture regal. Her eyes, though, sharp as glass. She brought your father home, Miss Vance, the butler said carefully. The woman descended slowly, each step measured. When she reached the last one, her gaze fixed on Amira. You found him? Yes, ma'am, Amira replied, uneasy. He was outside the bus stop. Said he was lost. Lydia Vance's expression didn't soften. Lost, she repeated, as if testing the word for cracks. And you just happened to be there? Amira hesitated. I was working nearby. Working, Lydia echoed, eyes flicking to the delivery bag slung across her shoulder, the logo peeling at the edges. Doing what exactly? Deliveries. Lydia's silence was a blade. And you decided to bring a stranger, my father, here instead of calling for help? The tone wasn't gratitude. It was interrogation. Amira swallowed hard. He didn't have a phone. He could barely stand. The older woman studied her a moment longer, then exhaled sharply. You can go now. I'll have someone send you a proper reward. A reward. The word hit her like sleet. Amira's fingers tightened around the scarf. I wasn't doing it for that, she said quietly. Lydia tilted her head, amused and unimpressed. Of course you weren't. Before Amira could answer, a voice drifted from the hallway, gentle but steady. Lydia. Mr. Langford appeared, now dressed in a robe, leaning on a cane. His eyes, clearer than before, found Amira immediately. She saved my life. The tension cracked for a heartbeat. Lydia blinked, her expression unreadable. Father, you should be resting. I will, he said, after you thank her. For a moment, Lydia said nothing. Then she stepped forward, her tone measured. Miss Cole, was it? Amira nodded. Thank you. It wasn't warm. It was procedural. Langford turned to Amira. You should rest, too. There's a guest room down the hall. Amira froze. Sir, I can't stay here. Nonsense, he said with a faint smile. "You can leave in the morning." "Humor an old man, will you?" Lydia started to protest, but he raised a hand. "She stays." The butler nodded, gesturing for Amira to follow. As she climbed the side stairs, she could feel Lydia's stare on her back, the kind that measured worth by skin and shoes. The guest room was small but immaculate. Too quiet. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the tall window. The girl looking back didn't belong here. Brown skin against white sheets, calloused hands against crystal light. Down the hall, voices murmured. Lydia's sharp, her father's soft. She couldn't hear the words, only the tone, disbelief, tension, something deeper. Fear. Amira laid the scarf beside her and whispered to the dark, "I think I just crossed a line that wasn't meant for me." Outside, the storm thickened, snow piling high against the glass. Inside the house, a silence began to spread, the kind that only exists when a secret remembers it's been found. Light spilled through the curtains like diluted gold. Too soft for a house built on steel and money. Amira woke to silence. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The scent of polished wood, the warmth, the sheets too smooth to belong to her life. Then it hit her. The mansion, the gate, the woman with eyes like ice. She sat up quickly. Her phone was dead, her backpack still damp. She had overslept, probably missed her morning shift. Her stomach sank. One night of kindness had already cost her more than she could afford. She opened the door carefully. The hallway stretched long and white, lined with portraits. Every face in those frames looked like it had never known hunger or wind. She tried not to stare, but one caught her eye, a young man with the same faint smile as the old stranger she'd rescued. "Morning, Miss Cole." The butler appeared out of nowhere, holding a tray. "Mr. Langford asked that you eat before you leave." Amira hesitated. "He's awake?" "Waiting in the library." The word library felt almost mythical. She followed him down the corridor, past a row of stained glass windows that turned the morning light into pieces of blue fire. The library was vast, 2 stories of dark oak and leather. Mr. Langford sat by the window, dressed neatly now, a cup of tea beside him. He looked nothing like the man she'd found in the snow. His posture was firm, his gaze sharp, as though the night before had been a test and she'd unknowingly passed. "Good morning, Amira," he said warmly. "You sleep well?" Yes, sir. Thank you for letting me stay." He gestured to the chair across from him. "You remind me of someone I knew. Same eyes." "Same stubborn kindness," Amira smiled, uncertain. "Most people don't call kindness stubborn." "They do when it makes them uncomfortable," he said with a small laugh. Before she could answer, footsteps echoed behind her. Lydia entered, dressed in business black, a phone in one hand. Her tone was brisk, almost performative. "Father, the doctor's coming at noon. You should rest before—" Her eyes landed on Amira. "You're still here." "I was just leaving," Amira said quickly. Lydia crossed her arms. "Not before we settle this properly." She turned her phone around. The screen glowed with a paused video. "Apparently," she said, "someone saw you last night, riding through town with my father on your bike. They posted it online." Amira froze. Lydia pressed play. The shaky footage showed her pedaling through the snow, the old man slumped on the back rack. A caption scrolled across the bottom. "Street girl caught with missing billionaire." The clip looped, framed by laughing emojis and cruel comments. Amira's chest tightened. It wasn't like that." "I know," Mr. Langford said softly. "People see what they're trained to see." Lydia's jaw tightened. "Father, this could cause a scandal." The board already called. Amira felt the heat rise in her throat. "I didn't do anything wrong." "No one said you did," Lydia replied, tone razor thin. "But public opinion doesn't need truth. It needs a story." The words hung in the air like smoke. Langford stood, resting on his cane. "Then we'll tell a better one." He turned to Amira. "You did nothing shameful. Let them talk." Amira met his eyes. There was gratitude there, and something else. A spark of resolve she hadn't expected from a man of his world. Lydia exhaled sharply. You have no idea how these things spread. Langford smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time someone did. Amira didn't understand yet, but she could feel it. A shift, small and dangerous. Somewhere between gratitude and power, a new story had begun writing itself. By noon, the storm had stopped, but inside the Langford mansion, a different kind of weather had begun. Invisible, electric, and mean. Amira sat in the small parlor by the window, hands clenched around a mug of untouched tea. Outside, sunlight bounced off the snow, too bright for the mood that had settled in the house. She could hear voices from the study. Lydia's sharp, controlled anger cutting through the walls. You can't just ignore this, Father. They're twisting it already. Let them twist, came his calm reply. Truth survives longer than rumor. Amira's stomach knotted. She wished it were true. In her world, truth barely made it past the first headline. Her phone buzzed. She had borrowed a charger from the butler. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications. Her name was trending on a local page. Who is the girl seen with reclusive billionaire Charles Langford? Pictures of her were everywhere. Screenshots from the video, blurry zoom-ins on her face. Some comments were curious. Most were cruel. Of course she's black, always chasing money. Bet she's his new gold digger. Street rat with a billionaire, must be a setup. She scrolled faster, fingers trembling. The words blurred into noise, familiar, poisonous noise. It didn't matter what she had done. The internet had already decided who she was. The butler entered quietly. Miss Cole. Mr. Langford would like to see you. Amira followed him back into the library. Lydia was pacing near the fireplace, her phone pressed to her ear. She didn't even look up when Amira walked in. Langford gestured toward a chair. Sit. She obeyed, still gripping her phone like a shield. He nodded toward the screen. You've seen it, I assume? Yes, sir. Her voice cracked. I swear I didn't want any of this. I know, he said. You did what few people would. You stopped. Lydia ended her call abruptly. That may be admirable, Father, but perception matters. This could destroy our reputation. Amira flinched at the word our. She didn't belong in that pronoun. Langford looked between them, then leaned forward. Do you believe in accidents, Amira? She frowned. Not sure. I don't either, he said. Sometimes the wrong eyes see the right thing, and it forces the world to look closer. Lydia scoffed. Philosophy won't help us. We need control of the narrative. PR, statements, silence, something. Amira's throat felt dry. What if I just disappear? Go back to work? You think that would stop them? Lydia snapped. You're viral. You're everyone's 15-minute scandal. Langford's eyes softened. Or you could be something else. Amira looked up. Like what? Proof that compassion still exists, even when it's inconvenient. She didn't answer. The words sounded too heavy, too distant from her life. People like me, he continued, we live behind glass. We forget the world outside it. Maybe this is a chance to change that. Lydia turned on him, voice sharp with disbelief. You want to make her the face of a charity? Are you out of your mind? He didn't respond, just kept his gaze on Amira. Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft and relentless. Amira stared at her phone one more time, her face distorted by the cracked screen, surrounded by comments that knew nothing about her. Then she whispered, almost to herself, they don't want kindness. Mr. Langford, they want a spectacle. He smiled faintly. Then let's give them one worth remembering. In that moment, she wasn't sure if he was saving her or recruiting her into something far larger than either of them understood. 3 days later, Amira's face was everywhere. Not the real one, the one the cameras invented. News anchors spoke her name like a symbol. Bloggers called her the miracle delivery girl. Others called her worse. The photo, her pedaling through the snow with Charles Langford clinging to the back of her bike, had gone viral across every feed in Ravensport. For the city's wealthy, it was an anecdote about kindness. For everyone else, it was proof that the rich only noticed people like her when tragedy made it fashionable. Amira watched it all unfold from the mansion's guest wing, feeling like a ghost haunting someone else's story. The morning headlines glittered across the TV screen. From poverty to privilege, Who really is Amira Cole? Langford heiress speaks, says girl's intentions unknown. She didn't need to read the full article. The words intentions unknown said everything. When Lydia entered, the scent of designer perfume followed her, sharp and deliberate. She set down a newspaper, its front page filled with Amira's photograph. "Congratulations," Lydia said, voice dry as paper. "You're famous," Amira folded her arms. "For the wrong reasons," Lydia smiled faintly. "That's how fame works." She leaned against the table. "My father thinks this is an opportunity. He's already calling journalists, arranging statements, something about turning the attention into a movement." "A movement?" Amira echoed, wary. "He wants to launch a foundation. He thinks people will donate if you're the face of it. The girl who stopped for a stranger?" Amira stared at her. "You make it sound like a sales pitch." "That's exactly what it is," Lydia said coolly. "Money needs a face, and you, Miss Cole, happen to have one that photographs well." Before Amira could answer, Langford entered. His tone was calm, almost rehearsed. "The Meridian Foundation," he announced. "For housing, health care, dignity, for those left behind." He looked at Amira. "You started it the moment you stopped that night. I'm just giving it a name." She blinked, uncertain. "You want me to be part of this?" "I want you to help me build it," he said. "You represent the part of the world I can't reach anymore." Lydia's jaw tightened. "Father, this isn't a storybook." "She's a stranger." Langford smiled faintly. "So were you once." The tension in the room thickened. Amira spoke slowly. "If this foundation really helps people like me, then fine. I'll help. But I don't want to be your charity project." Langford nodded, his expression solemn. "Then don't be. Be my partner." It was a simple sentence, but it shifted the ground beneath her. Partner. A word she'd never been offered before. Lydia crossed her arms. "Do you even understand what that means, Miss Cole? The scrutiny, the expectations?" Amira met her gaze. "I've lived under scrutiny my whole life, Miss Vance. Only difference is no one ever asked me to smile for it." The silence that followed was long, sharp enough to draw blood. Langford finally broke it. "We make the announcement tomorrow, together." As he left, Lydia turned to Amira, her voice quiet but edged with warning. "Careful, girl. The moment they stop cheering, they'll remember you don't belong here." Amira said nothing. She just looked out the window, at the frozen city that had already turned her into a headline. "Maybe," she whispered. "It's time they remember what belonging really means." The ballroom of the Meridian Hotel gleamed like a cathedral made of glass and money. Camera flashes cracked through the air like lightning. Laughter rippled from tables draped in ivory cloth. Waiters floated between them, silent as ghosts, balancing trays of champagne. At the center of it all stood Amira Cole, the girl from nowhere, now dressed in silver silk that wasn't hers, standing under chandeliers worth more than the building she once lived in. The lights burned against her skin. Every eye in the room weighed her down. Measuring, dissecting, Lydia stood beside her, flawless and rigid, rehearsing charm like an Olympic sport. Mr. Langford, however, looked calm, too calm, as if the chaos were part of his design. When the reporters crowded forward, Lydia raised her hand for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate the launch of the Meridian Foundation, a vision born from compassion and from one extraordinary encounter." She gestured toward Amira. "A young woman who reminded us that humanity still breathes beyond glass towers and gated estates." Applause followed, polite, shallow, expectant. Amira's palms were slick. Langford leaned closer. "Speak from the truth," he murmured. "That's the only language they don't own." She stepped toward the podium. The cameras clicked like insects. "My name is Amira Cole," she began softly. "Some of you have seen the video. The night I stopped for a man I didn't know. You've all told the story your way. Tonight, I'll tell mine." The room shifted, quieted. "I wasn't trying to be brave," she said. "I was trying to survive. But somewhere between the snow and the silence, I realized surviving isn't living. Helping him, It reminded me what being human feels like. And maybe, just maybe, that's something this city has forgotten. A few heads lifted. Others turned away, uncomfortable. She glanced toward the front row. Investors, journalists, politicians. All faces that had never seen hunger except in charity ads. This foundation isn't about saving people, she said, voice stronger now. It's about giving them what was stolen. Dignity, choice, a place in the story. Langford smiled faintly. Lydia froze, the smile on her own lips tightening like thread. The applause this time was slower, heavier, real. But not everyone clapped. From the back of the room, a man in a black suit raised his phone. The light from his screen caught her eye. A familiar face. The store manager from Ravensport, Evan Hale. His mouth curved into a cruel smirk as he recorded. The sound returned to the room in waves. Whispers, murmurs, suspicion. He uploaded the clip before she even finished speaking. The caption read, "Street girl turned savior?" Or manipulator with a billionaire sponsor? Within minutes, the internet caught fire again. Lydia's phone buzzed. Her face turned white. "It's spreading," she whispered. "He's accusing you of staging everything, the bus stop, the rescue, all of it." Amira's heart thudded painfully. "That's a lie." Langford's jaw tightened. Truth doesn't matter to men who sell lies for sport. Flashbulbs exploded again. Reporters shouted questions. "Miss Cole, did you know Mr. Langford before the night in question? Was this a publicity stunt? Are you romantically involved?" The words hit her like hail. Langford placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Look at me," he said. "Don't let them define the story." Amira looked up at the cameras, the same machines that had dragged her name through the dirt, and for the first time she didn't flinch. "You want the truth?" she said, voice clear and cold. "Then look closer. I didn't save him because he was rich. I stopped because no one else did. That's the story. Everything else, that's yours." Silence fell, sharp and absolute. For the first time, even the flashbulbs hesitated. By morning, Amira's name was poison. Every headline screamed betrayal. The girl who fooled a billionaire. Hero or hustler? Inside the Meridian hoax. Clips from the gala replayed across every screen, cut and twisted until her words meant the opposite of what she'd said. They looped her last line, "That's your story," over and over, turning it into defiance, arrogance, guilt. Online, the storm was merciless. She played him. She's a thief with better lighting. Another gold digger pretending to care. Amira watched it unfold from her phone, alone in the guest room. The same people who'd praised her now wanted to burn her. She turned the screen face down and stared at the ceiling. Her breath came shallow, every inhale scraping against something inside her chest. Langford's mansion felt colder that morning. Even the marble floor seemed to judge her. She could hear voices downstairs, Lydia and Charles, low, urgent, slicing through the air like knives. "You need to make a statement," Lydia was saying. "Silence is the only dignity left," Langford replied. "They're calling her a fraud." "Then let them. She doesn't owe them her pain." But Amira couldn't stand it anymore. She came down the staircase slowly, each step heavy as a confession. Lydia turned first, startled. "You shouldn't be here." "I live here, don't I?" Amira said quietly. "At least I did yesterday." Langford looked up. His face was pale, but his voice calm. "They'll forget soon enough. Outrage has a short memory." Amira shook her head. "You don't get it. People like you get redemption in newspapers. People like me get reminders in whispers." Lydia crossed her arms. "You think you're the only one suffering? My father's reputation, your father's reputation will survive," Amira snapped. "Mine was never allowed to exist." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Langford sighed, pressing a hand to his temple. "Maybe we step back," he said gently. "No more cameras. No statements. Just space to breathe." She nodded, though the words "step back" felt like being erased all over again. By noon, the mansion was swarmed. Reporters at the gates, drones hovering over the garden. Charles ordered them out, but Lydia warned him it was useless. "They'll dig until they find something to bury her with," she muttered. That night, Amira packed her bag. No one stopped her. When she reached the front door, Langford stood waiting, a shadow against the soft glow of the chandelier. "You don't have to leave," he said. "I do," she replied. "They don't see you when they look at me anymore. They see a mistake." He looked at her for a long time, then nodded slowly. "If you go, don't disappear. The world doesn't need another ghost." Amira smiled faintly. "Maybe ghosts are the only ones the world listens to." Outside, the snow had started again, light, silent, relentless. She walked down the long driveway, her boots crunching against the frozen ground. At the gate, reporters swarmed like vultures. Questions flew at her like stones. "Miss Cole, do you admit to manipulating Mr. Langford? Were you compensated for the story? Are you leaving because you're guilty?" She kept walking. Not a word. Not a glance. Just the sound of her breath fogging the air. When she reached the end of the street, she stopped, turned back once, and whispered to the dark shape of the mansion in the distance. "You saved me once. Mr. Langford, now it's my turn." Then she disappeared into the city, swallowed by its lights, its cold, its silence. A girl without a home again, but this time, not without purpose. The city at night looked nothing like Mercy. Neon lights bled into puddles of melting snow. Alleys whispered names no one claimed anymore. Amira walked until her legs shook. Each corner smelled like gasoline and hunger, the scent of people too tired to keep pretending they belonged anywhere. She ended up near South Point, the part of Ravensport that the news only showed when it needed proof of poverty. The skyline glittered above like a lie, all glass and promise. Down here, it was rust and survival. She ducked into an old laundromat, open 24 hours, fluorescent lights humming like restless insects. The owner, an old black woman with silver braids, looked up from behind the counter. "You look like the kind of tired soap can't fix," she said. Amira managed a thin smile. "Guess I ran out of clean places." The woman studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the back. "There's coffee on the burner. Sit before you fall." Amira sank into a cracked plastic chair. The warmth made her dizzy. For the first time since she left Langford's mansion, the silence felt kind. Her phone buzzed again. Another headline. "Foundation scandal. Deepens. Allegations of money laundering emerge." She frowned, scrolling. The article accused the Meridian Foundation of funneling donations into shell companies. And the proof? Anonymous documents, stamped with her name. Her heart lurched. "They forged me," she whispered. The woman glanced up. "What's that, child?" "They're blaming me for something I didn't do." The woman nodded slowly, not surprised. "City's built on that game. You're either the story or the sacrifice." Amira stared at the screen. The foundation, the one meant to help people like her, was being devoured by the same greed it claimed to fight. She thought of Langford, of Lydia's smirk, of the papers she'd seen him sign without reading. What if this wasn't just rumor? What if someone inside had used her fall to hide something worse? She needed proof, not to save her name, but the truth she had built her life around. That night, she found herself standing outside the Meridian Foundation's downtown office. The glass building loomed above her like a frozen wave. Most of the lights were off, except one on the top floor, Langford's old office. She pressed her hand to the door, locked. Through the reflection, she saw her own face, half in shadow, half in the glow of the streetlight. The world saw her as a thief. Maybe it was time to steal something real, the truth. She forced the side door open with a metal rod from a trash bin. Inside, the air smelled of polished floors and betrayal. Her footsteps echoed as she climbed the stairs. On the top floor, she found boxes stacked against the wall, donation reports, bank ledgers, unsigned checks. And there, buried beneath them, a folder stamped "Confidential, Lydia Vance." Amira flipped it open. Transfers, offshore accounts, donations that never reached the shelters they promised. Lydia's name everywhere, her breath caught. It wasn't her scandal. It was theirs. The elevator dinged behind her. Footsteps, slow, measured. She froze, clutching the folder to her chest. A voice floated through the dark. Smooth, Familiar, poisonous. Curiosity, Lydia said, stepping into the light, is a dangerous trait for girls who don't know when to disappear. Lydia's heels clicked like gunfire against the marble floor. Each step closer made the silence tighter. Amira didn't move. The folder was still in her hands, her breath clouding in the cold office air. Behind Lydia, the city lights glittered through the tall glass, a skyline built from someone else's suffering. So, Lydia said, her tone sugar-coated venom, the prodigal savior returns to steal again. Amira lifted her chin. No one had to steal this. It was already yours. Lydia's smile didn't reach her eyes. You shouldn't be here. I could say the same. The tension cracked like ice between them. Lydia walked to the desk, calm and graceful, as if she still owned every inch of the building. She set down a leather clutch, unzipped it, and pulled out a small voice recorder. You're not the first person to think you can blackmail me, Miss Cole, she said. But you might be the last. Amira took a step forward. You're laundering money, using a charity to clean greed. Such strong words, Lydia said softly. But tell me, who will believe you? The liar of Ravensport? The street girl who fooled a billionaire? Amira hesitated, her grip tightening on the folder. Lydia saw it and smiled wider. That's what I thought. She pressed the recorder's red button. Now let's get your confession on tape. You broke in. You stole confidential files. You acted alone, Amira's heart hammered. For a second, fear almost won. Almost. Then she spoke. Calm, sharp, deliberate. Funny thing, Lydia, you always underestimate poor people. We learned to keep records. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. A small green light blinked. Live recording. You're not the only one who hit record tonight. For the first time, Lydia's expression cracked. Amira held up the folder. This has every fake transaction you signed. Every dollar meant for housing that disappeared into your accounts. I'm done letting people like you buy morality with paper. Lydia's mask slipped completely. You think you can destroy me? She hissed. You think a viral martyr can outlive money? Amira stepped closer. I don't need to destroy you. I just need the truth louder than your lies. She turned toward the door, but Lydia's voice stopped her. You really think they'll forgive you, girl? Lydia called. Even if you win, they'll still see you as dirt. Just cleaner dirt. Amira paused. The words hit like stones, but she didn't turn. Maybe, she said quietly, but at least I'll stand on my own soil. Then she walked out. Down the stairwell, her pulse raced. The folder under her arm felt heavier than justice. It felt like a weapon. Outside, the night had turned to sleet. She ducked under an awning and opened her phone. She uploaded the files. Not to the police, to the people. Every report, every transfer, every forged name. Her hands shook as the progress bar filled. When the post went live, the city didn't sleep. The servers crashed under the weight of the truth. By morning, it was everywhere. News channels, social feeds, activist boards. Headlines blazed across screens. Meridian exposed. Whistleblower leaks proof of fraud. Langford legacy hijacked by his own daughter. Lydia's empire collapsed faster than it was built. As dawn broke, Amira stood in the gray light, soaked and shaking. She wasn't free yet, but she'd done what no one expected her to. She'd turned survival into resistance. By sunrise, the city was a battlefield of words. Screens glowed in cafes, train stations, living rooms, all showing the same headline. Whistleblower leaks Meridian Foundation corruption. Arthur Langford's daughter implicated in massive fraud. Comment sections burned with outrage. Talk shows replayed Amira's speech from the gala, the same one that once condemned her, now framed as prophecy. She sat in the laundromat again, phone in hand, trembling as she watched the world remember her name. Not as a thief, but as truth. The old woman with silver braids set a cup of coffee beside her. So it worked? Amira nodded faintly. They're finally seeing her for what she is. The woman smiled without surprise. And what about you, child? What do they see now? Amira didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Hero? Victim? Headline? None of it felt real. Outside, sirens echoed through the streets. The city had found a new story to devour, this time not her. Across town, the police raided Meridian's offices. Lydia Vance was escorted out in handcuffs, her perfect hair undone, her silence louder than the accusations that followed. Cameras swarmed, hungry for every angle. Amira watched it live, not with triumph, but with a strange, hollow ache. She'd won. So why did it still feel like loss? When the screen faded, she turned off her phone. The laundromat hummed with quiet machines. The steady rhythm of clothes spinning, cleansing, repeating. Maybe justice was like that. Endless cycles of washing away the same stains. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A message. Unknown number. She opened it. He'd be proud of you. No name. Just those words. Her heart stumbled. Arthur. She left the laundromat and stepped into the thin winter light. The air was sharp, clean, almost forgiving. By the river, where the city's noise softened into distance, she found the old greenhouse. It had been shuttered for months since Arthur's passing. The glass was cracked, vines spilling through the seams. She pushed the door open. Inside, dust floated like gold in the sunlight. The lemon tree stood in the corner, dry but still standing. She traced its trunk with her fingertips, remembering his voice. Keep the light on. Her phone buzzed again. This time, from a journalist requesting a statement. Then another. Then dozens. They wanted the exclusive. The story of the girl who brought down the elite. She stared at the screen, then set it aside. Instead, she found a small pad of paper near the window and began to write. Not a press release, but a promise. The Maple Light Foundation will be rebuilt. Not for headlines, for homes, for hope, for the ones still unseen. She signed it simply. Amira Cole. Later that day, she walked to the city library, the only place that still felt neutral ground, and met with the volunteers who had once worked under the Meridian name. Some were cautious, others skeptical. Why should we trust again? One asked. Amira looked at them, steady and unflinching. Because the truth didn't die with them. It just changed hands. The room fell quiet. She held up the paper. We start again. Smaller, cleaner, real. No cameras. No gala. Just people. When she stepped outside, the sun was setting over Ravensport. Red, stubborn, alive. For the first time since that night at the bus stop, she didn't feel lost. The world hadn't forgiven her. Maybe it never would. But it had listened, and sometimes that was enough. 6 months later, the city had changed, but not enough. Ravensport still glimmered at the top and groaned at the bottom. The rich swapped scandals, the poor swapped shifts. The snow had melted, but the cold remained. In a corner of the South Point district, a new sign hung over a renovated warehouse. Maple Light Community Center for Shelter. For dignity, for those still unseen. Inside, the walls smelled of fresh paint and hope. Folding tables served as desks. Donated laptops hummed with slow determination. And at the center of it all, Amira Cole, sleeves rolled up, organizing stacks of paper with the calm of someone who had already walked through every kind of storm. The city still called her the girl who saved a billionaire. But here, she was just Amira. Power's cutting again, called a young volunteer from the hall. Generator's choking. I'll check it, Amira said, wiping her hands. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. She smiled faintly. See? Even the dark's learning to cooperate. A ripple of laughter eased the tension. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. On the wall hung a photo, the only framed one in the building, of Arthur Langford, smiling beneath the caption, "Kindness is justice in motion." Every morning, Amira read it like scripture. That afternoon, a city councilman arrived, his suit too clean for South Point. 2 assistants trailed behind him, tablets ready, smiles sharpened. "Miss Cole," he greeted, voice oily. "You've done something remarkable here." "The mayor's office is impressed." Amira crossed her arms. "Impressed enough to help or just enough to take a photo?" He chuckled, unfazed. "A partnership proposal. Funding, publicity, a maple light could expand across Ravensport. Her instinct told her it sounded too familiar. Too neat, too easy. What's the catch? She asked. He smiled wider. Transparency. You'd have to align your messaging, limit certain controversial narratives. You mean the truth? Let's not make this ideological, he said smoothly. We're offering you a stage. Amira's voice cooled. I don't need a stage. I need roofs. He adjusted his cufflinks, eyes narrowing. You'd turn down government support because of pride? She met his gaze. Because I remember what happens when good things start serving politics. His assistant shifted awkwardly. You'll regret this, he said finally, tone clipped. City memory is short, but resentment lasts. Amira smiled thinly. Then they'll remember why we stayed small. He left without shaking her hand. That evening, the center buzzed with quiet energy. Volunteers sorted food boxes, children played by the windows, and Amira stood by the door, watching it all with the stillness of someone who'd finally found peace, even if temporary. A reporter approached, young, hesitant. Miss Cole, she said softly, everyone's waiting for your next big statement. Amira thought of all the microphones she'd stood behind, all the spotlights that turned warmth into interrogation. No statements, she said. Just stories. Tell theirs, not mine. The reporter nodded, eyes glinting with respect. As the night deepened, Amira stepped outside. The city skyline shimmered through the mist. For the first time, she didn't feel beneath it. She felt beside it. Her phone buzzed again. One message glowing across the cracked screen. You did it. A.L., her breath caught. Arthur's initials. She smiled, not in disbelief, but in recognition. The lights inside the center flickered once more, then steadied. And in that trembling glow, she whispered, We're not rebuilding what broke. We're building what's never been tried. The first threat didn't come as a shout. It came as a letter. Typed. Clean. Delivered in a white envelope. Slipped under the door of Maple Light one early morning before sunrise. Stay quiet. Stop digging. The city doesn't need another hero. No signature. No name, just that. Amira read it twice. Then a third time. Her hands didn't shake. They'd stopped doing that months ago. She folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer beside Arthur's photograph. They're scared, she murmured. That means we're doing something right. By noon, Maple Light was full. Families came for food, students for Wi-Fi, workers for warmth. The space hummed with quiet purpose. But beneath the rhythm of daily kindness, a new tension pulsed, unseen but undeniable. Someone had started following her online again. Fake accounts, doctored posts, accusations of misuse of funds, déjà vu. The old ghosts were learning new tricks. That evening, Malik, a soft-spoken volunteer with a talent for computers, approached her with concern. Amira, the city contracts. You turned them down, right? She frowned. Of course, he hesitated. Then how come there's a new partnership announcement on the council's site? Says Maple Light's funding is under city oversight. Amira's pulse spiked. That's impossible. Malik turned his screen toward her. The headline glowed, Community Center joins Ravensport Revitalization Program in cooperation with Mayor's office. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't real, but it looked real enough to fool everyone who wanted it to be. They're laundering reputation, she whispered, trying to turn us into a prop. Malik nodded grimly. And if you deny it, they'll say you're lying again. She exhaled slowly, fighting the familiar ache of exhaustion. Then we don't deny it, she said. We show them who we really are. That night, she called a meeting. Every volunteer, every donor, every family they'd helped filled the hall. The lights flickered, humming like nerves before thunder. Amira stepped forward, voice steady but low. They think we're for sale again, she began. They think kindness is a currency, that it can be owned, traded, or silenced. But they're wrong, she gestured to the crowd. Look around you. This is what they can't replicate. Community that doesn't need permission to care. Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then roaring. The old woman from the laundromat smiled from the front row. You tell 'em, baby, she said softly. Reporters showed up the next morning. Curious. Skeptical, circling like crows. "Miss Cole," one asked, "are you accusing the city of manipulating your organization?" Amira met his gaze without blinking. "I'm not accusing. I'm explaining. They build systems that feed on silence. We're done feeding them." The quote hit every major outlet within hours. By midnight, Maple Light's donations tripled. So did the threats, anonymous messages, late-night calls, shadows outside her window. Malik offered to call the police, but Amira shook her head. The system doesn't protect people like us from itself. He studied her quietly. "You're not scared?" "I am," she admitted. "But fear's just proof I still care." That night, she stayed long after everyone left. The center glowed faintly, a single candle in a city that kept trying to blow it out. She stood at the window, watching Ravensport's skyline shimmer, and whispered into the glass. They tried to turn truth into a weapon. I turned it into light. Somewhere outside, sirens wailed. But inside, Maple Light stood firm, fragile, flickering, unyielding, and so did she. The storm came back to Ravensport, not from the sky this time, but from the streets. A week after Maple Light defied the council, the city split open like a wound. Protesters filled the squares. Chants bounced off the marble of government buildings. Posters with Amira's face, drawn in black and gold, waved above the crowd like signals of rebellion. Justice isn't charity. Truth belongs to the people. The same media that once mocked her now chased her shadow. Every reporter wanted the quote that would define the movement. Every official wanted her silence. Inside Maple Light, Amira paced before the windows, her reflection fractured by the glass. Malik sat at a laptop nearby, watching live footage. "They've started blocking our feeds," he said. "Posts are vanishing as fast as we upload them." "Let them erase," she said. "We'll rewrite it louder." Her voice was steady, but the fatigue in her eyes told another story. A knock echoed through the hallway. When she opened the door, a man stood there, a courier holding a sealed envelope marked City of Ravensport, legal notice. Amira exhaled, half laughing. Of course. The letter accused Maple Light of violating municipal codes, misuse of funds, and inciting unrest. The fine was impossible. The deadline, immediate. "They're not shutting us down," Malik said softly. "They're burying us." Amira looked out the window at the glowing skyline. "Then we burn brighter." That night, the crowd outside Maple Light grew. People came with candles, drums, banners, songs. Someone projected her speech from months ago onto the side of the building. "Kindness is justice in motion." The phrase pulsed across the brick like a heartbeat. Police vans rolled in, blue lights cutting through the smoke. Loudspeakers barked warnings. Amira stepped outside before anyone could stop her. The air smelled like snow and gasoline. A line of riot officers stood waiting, visors down. Behind them, cameras flashed like judgment. She raised her hands. "Palms open, you can tear down walls," she said, voice carrying over the crowd. "But you can't evict a truth that already lives in people." A bottle shattered somewhere. The line wavered. Malik's voice cracked through a megaphone, pleading for calm. Then, from the police line, someone fired a flare, bright red, arcing high into the night. It landed on the edge of the Maple Light roof. The canvas banner caught first. Then the fire began. Gasps turned to screams. Smoke curled into the air, thick and black. Amira ran toward the door, but Malik grabbed her arm. "You can't go in!" "There are people inside," she shouted. She broke free, disappearing into the blaze. Inside, heat roared against her skin. She pulled two children from the back room, guiding them toward the exit. A wall beam cracked, flames racing through the rafters. When she stumbled back into the cold, her face streaked with soot, the crowd erupted. Not with panic, but with something else. Defiance. Phones lifted. Cameras rolled. Every eye was on her. Alive, ash-covered, unbroken. The chant rose like thunder. "Light won't die! Light won't die!" And for a moment, under the falling snow and orange glow, Ravensport stopped pretending it didn't care. Hours later, the building was gone. Ash and silence remained. But from the wreckage, someone placed a new sign made from burnt wood and chalk. Maple Light still stands. Amira watched from the curb. Wrapped in a blanket, her eyes wet but fierce, she whispered, "More to the night than to herself. Let them burn what they fear. The rest will keep burning in us." The fire burned for 7 hours. By dawn, Maple Light was nothing but ribs of steel and the faint scent of smoke drifting over South Point. The city tried to clean it up fast. Trucks rolled in, barriers went up, news anchors spoke in rehearsed sympathy. But the footage couldn't be buried. The video of Amira running into the flames had already circled the world. She went back in for strangers. The girl they called a liar just saved 10 lives. Maybe kindness really can fight fire. For once, the story didn't belong to the headlines. It belonged to the people. Amira woke in a hospital bed 2 days later. Her hands were bandaged, her lungs raw from smoke. Malik sat nearby, a bruise on his cheek and exhaustion in his smile. "You're trending again," he said softly. She groaned. "God, not that word. This time it's different," he said. "They're calling you the heartbeat of Ravensport." She looked out the window. Snow was falling again, slow, almost gentle. "Heartbeats fade," she murmured. "Not this one." He handed her a tablet. On the screen, a live feed of hundreds gathered at the ruins. Some held candles. Others planted flowers in the ash. And in the center, someone had placed a hand-painted sign. "Maple Light lives here." She couldn't speak for a moment. Just breathed, shallow, grateful. Later that week, she returned to the site. Her steps were slow, the ground still warm in places. The air smelled of smoke and rebirth. People recognized her instantly. But instead of reaching for their phones, they stepped aside, creating a path. A boy no older than 10 approached her with a crumpled envelope. "It's from my mom," he said. "You helped us get a place last month." Amira opened it. Inside was a single note written in shaky handwriting. "We lost everything once. You taught us that everything can start small again." Her throat tightened. She looked around at the faces, tired, hopeful, scarred, and realized something simple and terrifying. This wasn't her story anymore. It was theirs. Malik appeared beside her, voice quiet. "The city council wants to meet. They're different now." Offering support, land protection, she smiled faintly. "Funny how governments find morality once a camera's watching." He laughed. "You gonna take the offer?" She looked at the sign in the ash. "Maybe, but only if they understand one thing. Maple Light doesn't belong to them, or to me. It belongs to everyone who refused to look away." That night, she sat by the river again. The same river where it had all begun. The city lights shimmered in the dark water like scattered promises. She pulled out a small notebook, worn, soot-stained but intact, and began to write. "We build, they burn. We build again, because justice isn't a finish line. It's a rhythm, a heartbeat, a stubborn light that keeps finding ways to stay." She closed the book, exhaled and smiled. Behind her, the sound of footsteps, children laughing, volunteers unpacking, hammers striking new wood. Maple Light's rebuild had already begun. Wind caught her scarf, the same one she'd once wrapped around a stranger on a freezing night, and lifted it gently into the air. Amira watched it twist and fall back into her hands. She looked toward the dawn, gold, spilling over the rooftops, and whispered the words that had carried her through every fall. "The world doesn't need heroes, it just needs people who stop." And with that, the girl who once rode through snow became something rarer than a headline, a pulse that refused to die, a light that refused to leave.